That night Angel confronted him in the botanical dome. Not the public garden near the terminal, but a smaller academy dome, one used by administrative cadets for reflection exercises. The trees were young there, their trunks thin, their roots contained in carefully monitored soil. Luke found her by the water. She turned before he spoke. "You embarrassed him." Luke already knew who she meant. "I didn't mean to." "That's not the same as not doing it." He was sick. There were medics. They weren't moving. They would have. When? Angel crossed her arms. "You don't understand the position you put him in." Luke looked genuinely confused. "Your father?" "Yes. I put him in a position where an old man received medical care. You interrupted the most important civic ceremony on Mars. Maybe civic ceremonies should survive interruptions by sick people." Her eyes flashed. "That's easy for you to say." Luke fell silent. The words hurt because they were true in a way he did not immediately understand. Angel continued, more quietly. "You can act like consequences don't exist because other people absorb them." Luke stared at her. "Is that what you think I do?" "I think you act from conscience and leave structure behind you. And I think structure keeps asking conscience to wait." They stood facing each other beneath the artificial moonlight. For once there was no easy tenderness between them. Angel said, "If everyone behaved like you, the system would collapse." Luke did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice was soft. "If a system collapses because people help each other, maybe it deserves to." Angel looked away as if he had struck her. He regretted it at once. Not because he thought the sentence false. Because he knew she had heard more in it than he meant to say. Her father. Her class. Her entire life. Luke stepped closer. "Angel, no." She wiped at her eyes angrily, refusing to let tears form. "No. Don't soften it." He stopped. She looked back at him. "That's the problem with you. You say things like that as if they don't destroy worlds." Luke answered, "Maybe some worlds are built wrong." She left him there. For the first time since childhood, they ended a conversation without forgiveness. The next morning, Luke expected punishment. Instead, Commander Graves assigned him to a leadership simulation. That was worse. The exercise took place inside the Deep Neural Theater, a spherical chamber lined with sensory projectors. Cadets entered through separate doors, each wearing a neural crown and pressure suit. The simulation would place them inside a collapsing asteroid mining facility. Objective: recover reactor core data and evacuate before structural failure. Team leader, Luke Ashford. Steve grinned when the assignment appeared. "Congratulations. They finally weaponized your guilt." Evelyn checked her suit seals. "Focus. This scenario is graded." Sarah looked at Luke. "What's the plan?" Luke studied the simulation map. 3 corridors. Unstable power grid. A reactor chamber flooding with radiation. 6 virtual workers trapped in separate compartments. The official objective marker pulsed over the data core. Luke knew the Academy expected him to choose. Mission or people. He also knew everyone was watching. Graves. The instructors. Maybe Marcus. Maybe Angel. The simulation began. Darkness. Then alarm light. They stood inside a mining station tearing itself apart. The sound was immense, metal strain, escaping atmosphere, distant explosions. Evelyn immediately located the shortest route to the data core. "We can reach objective in 4 minutes. Sarah checked structural integrity. Corridor B collapses in 7. Steve said, "Virtual workers located in C and D." "We don't have time for both." Luke absorbed the map. For a moment, everyone waited for the predictable moral mistake. Then Luke said, "Evelyn, take Steve. Get the core." Evelyn blinked. "What?" "Sarah and I take C, Remote drones take D. Steve stared at him. That's actually a plan. Luke looked at him. Try not to sound disappointed. They moved. The simulation intensified. Evelyn and Steve sprinted through a corridor shedding sparks. Sarah and Luke cut through a jammed pressure door to reach the first trapped workers. Luke's neural link opened to maintenance drones crawling through corridor D. 3 bodies. 6 machines. One mind stretched between them. He felt the drones as distant hands. He felt his own hands lifting debris. He heard Evelyn cursing over the channel as radiation spiked. The data core detached. Steve shouted, "We have it!" Sarah pulled the last worker free. Corridor D collapsed around one drone, then another. Luke drove the remaining machines forward through falling rock, extending mechanical arms toward the virtual workers. One drone's cutter failed. He improvised, using the machine's own broken chassis as a wedge. The workers escaped. But the drone was trapped. The station clock reached 30 seconds. Evacuation shuttle departing. Everyone had to run. Luke remained partially linked to the trapped drone. He could feel pressure crushing it. Not pain. Not exactly. But something like loss. Sarah grabbed his arm. Luke! It's stuck. It's a machine. The same sentence again. Always the same sentence. Luke disconnected. The drone disappeared from his mind like a light going out. They ran. The simulated shuttle launched with 4 seconds remaining. The theater lights returned. The cadets stood sweating in silence. A score appeared. Objective complete. All virtual personnel recovered. 1 drone lost. Structural penalty minimal. Commander Graves entered. For once she did not begin with criticism. She looked at Luke. You delegated. Yes, Commander. You prioritized the mission. Yes, Commander. You still attempted full rescue. Yes, Commander. Why? Luke removed the neural crown. Because the mission was incomplete without it. Graves studied him. Then turned to the evaluation board. Record highest adaptive score of the term. Steve whispered, I take back 12% of what I've said about you. Evelyn stared at the score, stunned. Sarah smiled openly. Luke looked toward the observation window. Behind the dark glass, he could just make out Angel standing beside her father. She did not smile. But she did not look away. The months after Founders' Day changed the group. Not dramatically. Dramatic change was rare on Mars. Change came as hesitation. As unfinished sentences. As glances toward doors before dangerous opinions. As cadets staying later in private rooms where microphones were rumored not to work. They met often in an unused observation dome overlooking Valles Marineris, accessible through a maintenance corridor Sarah had discovered and Steve had immediately declared sacred. The canyon stretched beneath them like a wound across the planet. Thousands of kilometers long. Deep enough to swallow nations. Under the stars, Mars seemed honest. There was no ceremony wide enough to cover that emptiness. Mateo Alvarez joined them there one evening. Luke had not known he had been admitted to the advanced field cohort until he saw him standing by the glass with 2 cups of contraband minor coffee. Mateo was older than the others by nearly 15 years, his face lined by underground work, his hands scarred in ways academy gloves could not hide. Luke embraced him hard. You didn't tell me. Mateo laughed. And missed that face? Steve accepted one of the coffees. Is this illegal? Mateo shrugged. Morally medicinal. They sat together beneath the stars. For a while they spoke of ordinary things. Training. Bad food. Instructor Graves. Which cadet had fainted during high G spin? Then Evelyn asked the question that changed the night. Did anyone here grow up believing they could become anything? No one answered. That was answer enough. Evelyn looked uncomfortable. I did. Steve said, Of course you did. She flinched. Sarah warned him with a look, but Evelyn raised a hand. No. He's right. She turned toward Luke. I thought meritocracy meant the path was open and some people simply walked farther. Luke asked, And now? She looked out at the canyon. Now I think some of us were born closer to the destination. Mateo nodded slowly. My brother invented a safer ice shear once. Luke turned. You never told me. Wasn't my story. What happened? Administration bought the design. Good. Named it after the official who approved implementation. Silence. Mateo sipped his coffee. My brother got a certificate. Steve raised his cup. To merit. No one laughed. Sarah said, My father always said Mars can't afford injustice. Steve replied, Maybe that's why it hides it so efficiently. Evelyn looked toward Angel, who had arrived quietly near the entrance. None of them had noticed. Angel heard enough. She walked forward. You talk as if the people running Mars are enemies. Steve answered, No. Enemies are honest. They tell you they're against you. Angel's expression tightened. Luke stood. That's not fair. Steve looked at him. Isn't it? Angel spoke before Luke could. My father has spent his entire life keeping this colony alive. Mateo answered gently, No one doubts that. Then what are you saying? The old miner looked at her with no anger at all. That sometimes good men keep bad arrangements alive because the alternative frightens them. Angel absorbed the sentence. It reached her because Mateo did not sound like an accuser. He sounded tired. She looked at Luke. Do you believe that? Luke hated the question. Because the honest answer would hurt her. I believe your father is a good man. That isn't what I asked. No. The dome became very quiet. Below them, Valles Marineris vanished into darkness. Angel nodded once. Thank you for not lying. Then she left. Luke almost followed. Mateo stopped him with one hand. Not yet. Luke turned on him. Why? Because sometimes people need to be alone with the truth before they can stop hating the person who brought it. Luke watched the empty doorway. He wondered if he had just lost her. He had not. Not entirely. But something had changed between them. For weeks, Angel kept distance. They still saw each other in shared lectures. Still exchanged necessary words. Still walked sometimes beneath the domes. But the old ease had gone. In its place came something sharper and more adult. They no longer loved each other as children standing outside class. They were becoming people shaped by incompatible futures. Then came the accident in Neural Bay 4. A cadet named Harlan Cruz, Professor Cruz's nephew, entered deep synchronization without properly clearing residual feedback from the previous simulation. It was a careless mistake. A privileged mistake. The kind usually absorbed by technicians before it became visible. This time, the interface locked. Harlan's body seized in the chair. 6 autonomous rigs in the adjoining chamber activated simultaneously, their industrial arms thrashing without command. One technician was thrown against a wall. Another became trapped between 2 moving platforms. The emergency cutoff failed. The observation window cracked. Cadets screamed. Luke was in the corridor when the alarm sounded. He ran toward the bay. Graves shouted through the intercom, ordering evacuation. Luke saw Angel on the far side of the glass, frozen outside the administrative observation room. Inside the chamber, the trapped technician was seconds from being crushed. Luke grabbed a neural crown from the prep station. Sarah shouted, You can't link into an active cascade. How do we stop it? You don't. Luke put on the crown. Evelyn grabbed his arm. You'll burn your cortex. Luke looked at the technician trapped beneath the mechanical arm. Maybe not all of it. He slammed his hand onto the manual sync plate. The world exploded. 6 machines crashed into his mind like falling buildings. Harlan's panic filled everything, a human scream transmitted through metal. Luke could not control the rigs. No one could. So he did not try. He gave them something simpler. A body to follow. He raised his arm. One rig twitched. He lowered his breathing. Another slowed. He stopped fighting the cascade and began absorbing rhythm from it, the way he had once listened to unstable ice beneath a collapsing cavern. Not control. Resonance. Sarah realized what he was doing. He's phase matching the feedback. Evelyn shouted, "That's not possible." Steve, pale, whispered, "Please be possible." Luke turned one machine away from the trapped technician. Then another. The third arm slammed into the floor inches from the man's head. Luke screamed. Blood ran from his nose. Angel watched through the broken glass, horrified. Graves arrived with emergency technicians. "Pull him out." Sarah shouted, "If you disconnect now, the rigs crush everyone." Luke extended both hands. All 6 machines froze. For one perfect second, the room obeyed him. Then the emergency cutoff finally engaged. The rigs collapsed. Luke fell with them. He woke in medical. Again. A familiar ceiling. Unfamiliar pain. Steve sat beside the bed reading a prohibited entertainment feed. Without looking up, he said, "Before you ask, yes, everyone lived. No, you are not dead. Yes, Graves is furious. No, I did not cry. Sarah cried. Evelyn cried. I produced tactical moisture." Luke tried to smile and winced. "Angel?" Steve's expression shifted. "She was here." "Was?" "Her father came." Luke closed his eyes. "Of course." A few minutes later Angel entered. Her face was controlled too carefully. That frightened him more than tears. "You could have died," she said. Luke exhaled. "That's becoming a theme." "No." Her voice broke. "No jokes." He looked at her properly then. She had been crying. "I saw what happened to the machines," she said. "I saw your body when they pulled you out. I'm fine." "You're not fine. You keep surviving things and calling that proof." Luke had no answer. Angel stepped closer. "Do you think dying for people is love?" "No." "Then what is it?" He considered. "I think refusing to help is a kind of death." She hated him for saying it. Loved him for saying it. Both at once. She sat beside the bed. For a long time neither spoke. Then she took his hand. Not as a friend. Not anymore. Luke looked at their hands. "Angel. Don't." He stopped. She leaned forward and kissed him. It was brief. Terrified. Inevitable. When she pulled away, she whispered, "This is impossible." Luke answered, "Most true things seem to be." She laughed softly despite herself. Outside the medical bay, Marcus Vallon stood unseen in the corridor. He had arrived to speak with his daughter. He had seen enough. He left without entering. His expression was not anger. Not yet. It was calculation. The final examinations came at the end of the second year. No ceremony announced them. The academy simply changed tempo. Cadets disappeared into testing chambers and emerged hours later pale, silent, or triumphant. Neural capacity was measured. Tactical judgment evaluated. Psychological resilience scored. Political reliability, though never named, was assessed by people who never wore evaluator badges. Luke passed academic thresholds barely. He passed adaptive neural command beyond all projections. In leadership scenarios, he remained statistically strange. He sacrificed too much to rescue individuals. Yet teams under his command survived more often than any others. Instructors argued. Some called him unsuitable for strategic operations. Others called him indispensable precisely because he refused to think like a strategist. Commander Graves made the final training recommendation. Her report consisted of one paragraph. Cadet Ashford remains insubordinate in moral structure, unpredictable under ethically asymmetric stress, and insufficiently deferential to mission abstraction. He is also the finest crisis operator in the program. If Project Phantom experiences catastrophic failure, he is the cadet most likely to keep others alive longer than probability permits. Recommends selection, ****. Marcus read the report twice. Then approved it. The selection ceremony took place in the Hall of Founders. The same hall where Luke had first seen Earth burn in Professor Strauss's lecture. Now the stars above the ceiling burned brighter. Cadets stood in formal lines. Families watched from the upper galleries. Angel stood beside Marcus in the administrative section, her face unreadable. No one knew about them. Not officially. Not yet. Professor Strauss took the central platform. 2 years ago, you entered this academy as citizens. She let the words echo. Today, some of you leave as instruments of history. Behind her appeared Phantom 1. The black ship rotated silently above them. Luke felt the old mixture again. Awe. Fear. Destiny. Strauss continued. The asteroid belt has been denied to Mars for 2 centuries. Every previous attempt failed. Some call this misfortune. Some call it caution. We call it what it is. Her voice hardened. Siege. The cadets stood straighter. Project Phantom will break that siege. Names appeared one by one in light. Captain Elena Markovich, Command. A career fleet officer, disciplined and severe. Lieutenant Armand Sayeg, Navigation. Tessa Rourke, Security Systems. Sarah Palmer, Industrial Engineering. Sarah inhaled sharply. Evelyn Fisher, Geological Analysis. Evelyn closed her eyes in relief. Steve Jones, Field Engineering. Steve muttered, that is a clerical error of historic proportions. Mateo Alvarez, Mining Operations Specialist. Luke looked back. Mateo gave him a small nod. Then the final name appeared. Luke Ashford, Neural Mining Command. For 1 second he did not move. The hall applauded. Steve elbowed him. That's you, unless another reckless Ashford is hiding somewhere. Luke stepped forward. The light from Phantom crossed his face. Professor Strauss pinned the mission insignia to his collar. Not gray. Not labor. Black and silver. Project Phantom. For the first time in his life, Luke wore a mark that did not describe where he came from. It described where he was going. He looked toward Angel. Her eyes shone. Marcus noticed. Again. This time, he did not look away. That night Luke returned alone to the observation dome above Valles Marineris. He expected to find silence. Instead Mateo waited there. The older miner held 2 cups of contraband coffee. Luke laughed. Where do you keep getting that? From people who understand civilization. They stood side by side looking over the canyon. Mateo handed him a cup. Your father would have been proud. Luke swallowed. The words hit harder than expected. You think so? I know so. Luke looked down at the mission insignia. I keep thinking this means something. It does. What? Mateo took a long sip. That's the dangerous part. Everyone will try to answer that for you. Luke nodded slowly. What do you think it means? Mateo smiled. Means Mars found a way to send a miner far enough away that he can finally see the whole mine. Luke did not understand. Not yet. But he remembered the sentence. he would remember it on Earth. Years later. When it finally became true. Far from New Olympus. Far from the domes. Far from the speeches, statues, and sleeping academy barracks. Beyond Deimos, hidden against the black, an Earth observation platform received the full telemetry package from its Martian surveillance network. Phantom 1 had completed final cloaking calibration. Projected launch window, 6 months. Projected destination, O'Reilly, 421. Projected mission survival without intervention, 12%. Projected probability of catastrophic reactor field cascade, 79%. The technician from before read the numbers in silence. Beside her, an older coordinator said, "Dharma has reviewed the model." And? The coordinator's face was grave. "It agrees." The technician looked at the image of the selected crew. 8 Martian faces appeared. Captain Markovich. Sarah Palmer. Evelyn Fisher. Steve Jones. Mateo Alvarez. And finally Luke Ashford. The technician paused on him. "Do they know?" "No." "Will they accept assistance?" "No." "Then how do we help them?" The coordinator did not answer immediately. Beyond the station window, Earth shone blue and whole. At last he said, carefully. A new directive appeared across the screen. Prepare first contact rescue protocol. Back on Mars, Luke slept beneath the academy roof with the Phantom insignia beside his bed and his father's identification plate beneath his pillow. He dreamed of ice. Of stars. Of Angel's hand in his. And somewhere in the dream, beneath all the heroic noise of Mars, he heard an old worker whisper, "Don't make trouble." Luke turned in his sleep. The whisper changed. It became something else. Not a warning. A question. What if trouble is the only way anyone ever gets saved?